Yeah, I'll be staying out of the oceans now. Hey everyone, today I will be reviewing a book that I kind of have a lot of mixed opinions about, and that is the 1974 novel by Peter Benchley, Jaws. This was a very interesting read that, really threw me for a loop. There was some stuff that I did not expect in here. Obviously, yes, I have seen the movie. It's actually one of my, top movies. I won't say it's a favorite, but it's definitely probably up there in my top of like movies I really like. So it was kind of hard not to do, like a compare and contrast of like what's going on. But, I had fun reading it. So I'll go over what I liked, what I thought was really good, and I will also talk about what was bad. Let's start off with the good with just mentioning anything written from the shark's point of view, or I don't even want to say point of view, but where you kind of are focusing more in on the shark itself. There are some like pretty suspenseful, kind of like animalistic, just scenes written from that kind of point of view that were just really good. If there was more of that in this book, it was some really great writing, and it just kind of was a different perspective. It was really well done. It wasn't so mysterious. It felt slightly scientific, but in a good way. But yeah, there was some really good suspense of like how some of the shark attacks happened and all that kind of stuff. Anything with the shark was pretty well done. This shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but I will mention how the suspense that this book is able to create with the shark, either from the point of view or like when a character is going to do something in or near the water. There's a scene where they are on a boat, checking for something. And the whole time there's a scene where somebody's like leaning over trying to check something on the side of the boat. And the whole time I was just like, is something going to happen? I didn't think it would because of the movie, but I didn't know how different the book was going to be, because up until this point it had been, there had been some big differences. And just that whole time, the suspense of like, is something going to happen? Because something is going to happen, but just that when, it just built that really well. And you kind of always felt like that threat was there, because so much of what is taking place on the water, the shark is there. You're ready for it to like jump out, do something crazy, kill somebody make a mistake, fall in the water, or any of these kind of things that, would happen when you're near water are just great. I think with the suspense that either the scene I just mentioned with the boat and somebody like leaning over the edge of it might have been one of the best scenes in the whole book that when it came to that suspense, or there's another one where somebody's in the water and you're like, up until this point you're not sure what's going to happen, so you're just really just like feeling it. It was just really well done, and I know this is like a kind of a suspense thriller kind of book, but I didn't know how well it was going to, be. I didn't know if the movie was going to be kind of a better rendition, or if the book kind of set up the foundation for the movie. I wasn't really sure, but the fact that the book was able to execute on that aspect was really nice. I will say this was a much more human book, and that itself was interesting. I wasn't ready for it, but what I will say in the aspect of it being good, that since it was such a human book, you really saw the actions, the falling actions and the repercussions of what people were doing. There is obviously kind of like the story of corruption, and you're not really sure, that's like its own kind of little side plot, but the corruption and the things that are happening weigh really heavily on, especially the main character, Brody. It is the same character. It weighs really heavily on him because he feels like he is either doing the right thing, not doing the right thing, just everything that's going on with that. I don't know, it just really brought in a human aspect to this book that I appreciated, and you kind of feel for that character. You feel for Brody as he's, dealing with the town and the mayor, and just like, you get that definitely like early 70s, 60s kind of vibe throughout this story of like that small town community. That's another thing I'm going to throw this in as a positive. They kind of connect, but I did get that vibe of like this being an older book, and sometimes, it's fun to like reminisce and use rose-tinted glasses, like go back to like a simpler time or whatever. And, some of that was captured in this book. There are definitely some problems. This was a book written and, published in 1974. I'm sure you can imagine some of the way women and minorities are talked about in this book, which is always a kind of problematic thing with stories from this time. Well, not all books, but there are plenty of books with those kind of problematic things. But the parts that it was able to capture, of like that small town feel and just kind of like the community like being together. I don't know, it just feels like that's something that is kind of missing in, especially where I live today. You know, it's not, you know, I live in a big city, so that kind of thing doesn't really exist. And so, you know, getting that kind of slice of life to a point, it definitely crosses the line over of it being too much, which I'll get to. It was kind of nice, and I wanted to throw that in as well. I don't feel like I've done a really good job of saying, you know, why this was a good book, but the aspects of it that are good are really well done. The problem is there is a lot of bad. I'll just go ahead and start right off with, I know I mentioned I liked how Brody, the most main character, I appreciated like seeing his struggle with like his feelings and what's going on, but for the most part, every character in here sucks, including him. Every character basically sucks. Then every man in this book is like ready to get into a fist fight at every second, and it was so jarring at sometimes where like the littlest thing would set people off to the point where like they're ready to fight, and it was just so jarring to like see that. I'll go through, I'll talk about a few of the characters and a little bit more specifically. So Brody, like I said, you deal with his regrets and everything, but you also deal with him just being very strange towards his wife. You know, he has certain feelings about her, and I don't know, there are definitely some issues that go on. Speaking of his wife, she was such a strange character to read. The whole middle section of this book really turned into like the real story of a desperate housewife. You get so much from her, and I'm actually going to save her because I'm going to roll her into my next point. But yeah, then you know, why can't I remember the scientist's name that comes? Well, he's completely escaping my mind, but he's an awful guy. The mayor of the town is an awful guy. The townspeople are almost all awful people. The editors of the paper are almost all awful people. It's just all around just bad people doing bad things and expecting good things to happen, or just, it's just crazy to me that all of these characters are just constantly making bad decisions and just doing bad things, and they're all just so ready to fight and just be awful, and just, I hated, like, there wasn't a character in here I liked. I guess I kind of liked Brody, but not really, because he was a jerk too. So, you know, it just, the characters left a lot to be desired. I said I was going to save Brody's wife for this section because I am literally going to say the entire middle section of this book. The first little bit of this book and the last little bit of this book, and this isn't a very long book. There is probably, I don't know the page count because I did this on audio, but I think it was a 5-hour long audio book. I would say the first hour and a half is really good, and the second hour and a half is really good, but everything else in there, man, it turns into like the desperate housewife who is like rebelling against her life choices. She has a lot of regrets, and I just did not expect to spend so much time with a character lamenting her life and making bad decisions that, you know, is going to affect not only her, but her family and just everything, you know, just making bad decisions in a book that I thought was going to be about a shark eating people. And you know, like I said, some of that slice of life stuff is fine, but she was such a grating character. And there are definitely some instances in this book of like, I don't know if you have ever heard of it, but there's a subreddit called Men Writing Women where there's just examples of men writing women to be such unbelievably uncharacteristic of like what the reality is. A lot of times it's either about like the body or a female body or just all kinds of things. There are so many examples in this book of like this dude just thinking he knew what women wanted that it honestly like really threw me for a loop a couple times. So that all happens in that middle section of the book where I don't know if Peter eventually was having trouble at home or if he just really had some very, obviously at this modern time, a very antiquated view on women and how he thought that should work. But yeah, it was just not what I expected from the story, and it's bad. And I could go into it more. It's really big spoilers, so if you want to know more, let me know in the comment, and I will leave you a personal spoiler-filled comment with what's going on if you don't plan on reading this. I don't want to spoil it though, but yeah, check the comments, and I'll definitely respond to you down there. But yeah, that middle section was rough. I mentioned that that last like hour and a half of the book was really good. I will say, I don't know if I want to count this as purely a bad. It's kind of one of those mixed ones that I'm leaning a little bit more negative. There were a lot of plot threads left untied at the end of this book. This book, like, you have the falling action, the climax, it's all happening, and then it's just done. There's no like fallout, you don't get anything. And the problem with that is it would have made so much sense in this story, the way the kind of narrative is set up with a lot of like newspaper editor kind of stuff like being involved. Like, it would have made so much sense to kind of get like the post credit of like what happened after whatever. I mean, everyone probably knows the ending of Jaws, but once that action happens, it would have made so much sense to like get like the forward from a newspaper. It doesn't even need to be a lot, but it would have made so much sense for that to happen, where we kind of get like what happened. And unfortunately we don't. It would have been nice. I think it really would have improved just that last some of those little threads that needed to be tied up. So it also works because it's just like such a sudden like force of nature kind of thing that happens. It almost works, but I'm gonna have to lean to it doesn't. So overall, I did end up giving this book a 3-star. I think it was a pretty low down in my ranking as far as 3 stars go, but I still had some fun with it. Like I said, the first and like last little section really did make up for that middle section. Some of the suspense and the stuff that's going on and some of the action that happens later just really worked. And that's good, because if not, this definitely would be a very, very low rated book if it were less than what we got. This is a really hard book for me to recommend. Like I said, there are definitely some bad references and thoughts on minorities, LGBTQ, and women. If that stuff doesn't really trigger you and bother you, I know for some people they just don't want to waste their time reading stuff like that. This probably isn't for you. If you are one of the people kind of like me who can see why that's a negative, but kind of get past it in a book, especially one that's this old. I probably wouldn't accept this in a book that was published in 2023, but one in 1974. I just kind of chop it up as like a time capsule of the past, unfortunately. I could maybe recommend it for you. But yeah, it's hard for me to recommend this for most people. But that is all my thoughts on Jaws. Let me know if you have any thoughts down in the comments. Definitely let me know if you want some spoilers about that middle section, about what's going on. I would be more than happy to let you know. But I hope you have a good one.